At this point, it's pretty obvious that the deep state is trying to pull off a coup d'etat in the United States. Using a combination of voter fraud and psychological warfare, they're hoping to steal the White House and our nation. Fortunately, the Founding Fathers were a lot smarter than the deep state and their shenanigans. Stay tuned and I'll tell you what Patriots can do to reverse this deep state coup d'etat. On last week's show, we talked about the massive amounts of voter fraud that took place all over this country, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in Nevada. I mean, it's just everywhere. Actually, right as we're speaking right now, Donald Trump just put out a tweet saying that Dominion voting systems, which coincidentally is connected to one of George Soros's minions and several other deep state swamp creatures, rigged the computer vote by depriving him of millions of votes and handing those to Joe Biden. Actually, here at the New American, my friend and fellow senior editor Bill Jasper, one of the best journalists in America, just interviewed General McInerney, third highest ranking official in the Air Force, who explained that the vote was stolen. So guys, our vote was stolen. If you don't realize, go back and watch last week's episode of Behind the Deep State. This is a crisis. But fortunately, our founding fathers were very wise men, and they prepared for horrifying events just like this to make sure we would not have our country stolen from us. So Trump has promised he's going to keep on fighting. Top Republicans in Congress, in state legislatures, in governor's mansions, all over the country have promised to keep fighting as well. We've got investigations going. We've got lawsuits. We've got efforts to overturn the fraud making their way through the system. But all over the country, patriots like you are saying, what can we do to try to stop this outrageous attempt to steal the election? Well, I'm glad you asked. There is a whole lot that we can do. So stay tuned. In case you didn't know yet, I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State. And I'm going to go through some of the things that we can do as concerned Americans to try to restore the integrity of our vote and make sure that Sleepy Joe and Kamala Harris do not steal the election. So first we want to turn to the U.S. Constitution. There is an incredible trump card right there in Article 2, no pun intended. So if you go to Article 2, Section 1, the Constitution explains, and I'm quoting, "Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors." So just because the Democrats and the deep state were able to stuff ballot boxes and rig the computer systems, that doesn't mean that we all just have to roll over and play dead while they steal our freedom and steal our country. State legislators have this incredible tool, Article 2, Section 1, at their disposal. And as fate would have it, or if you believe in coincidences, almost every single one of the states that they tried to steal that's in play right now, at least the ones that are critical to Trump winning this election, are controlled by solidly Republican legislatures. Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. I'm looking at you. So the process works something like this, guys. On December 14th, electors selected by their state legislatures will meet. And on January 6th, the votes that those electors cast will be counted in Congress. Now, in normal elections, and obviously this was not a normal one, it's kind of seen as a formality. I mean, it's not a formality. This is how the president is decided, but it's seen as a formality because generally we already know what's going to happen. In most cases, state legislatures just send delegates based on the formula that they have established in law. Most states say winner takes all. There's a handful of states that divide it up a little bit differently. But this time around, it is not going to be so simple. All the fake media saying that Biden is president-elect already, they're lying. And there's a huge coalition of organizations and leaders and legal experts and public officials that are right now working to overturn this fraud. My friends over at Phyllis Schlafly's Eagles have been crucial in this operation. Lawyer Andy Schlafly sent a wonderful email, and I'll go through that in just a moment. Then we've also got, of course, Fox News host Mark Levin. We'll talk about him. We've got the John Birch Society. We've got the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Commentator David Horowitz, very, very well known, and many, many others, including Dick Morris, and we'll go through each of these in a moment. But what all of these leaders and organizations and experts have in common is that they are now urging the American people to work with their state legislators and make sure that the Democrats and the deep state can't steal the election. So let's start with Andy Schlafly, an absolutely brilliant legal mind. Of course, the son of the late superhero Phyllis Schlafly, one of my favorite conservative leaders of all time. Wonderful, wonderful lady. And he urged every Republican legislator in the state of Pennsylvania to do their duty. And I'm going to quote a little bit from an email that he sent. He said, the voting in this presidential election has been tainted beyond repair. Poll watching and transparency were blocked. Improper ballot harvesting is evident from the severely imbalanced mail-in results. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overstepped its authority by expanding mail-in voting. Those who voted on Election Day in compliance with the law have been disenfranchised by ballot box stuffing by mail. And so Schlafly argued that the legislature in Pennsylvania should, quote, fulfill its duty under the U.S. Constitution by appointing electors that will honor the legitimate votes cast on Election Day, not the fraudulent ones created out of thin air by Democrats and the deep state and their computer programs and dead people. He went on to say that last year, an election board in North Carolina overturned a congressional election won by a Republican based on an anecdote about ballot harvesting. When, as now, an election result is tainted and lacks the confidence of the American people, then the Constitution calls on the state legislature to act. The governor has no role in this. All right, guys, let's stop here for a minute. That is critical. Okay, the fake news media wants you to think that the governor is going to have to approve of the legislature's efforts to send Trump electors. Baloney. Read your Constitution. Go back to Article 2, Section 1. There is no role for the governor. There is no role for the courts. It is completely up to the legislature. Now, Schlafly concluded his email by saying, please step up and do what is best for our country and honor the votes cast on Election Day rather than disenfranchising them by improperly voted and improperly counted mail-in ballots. There needs to be a check and balance against election misconduct, and the Constitution authorizes the state legislature for this. As a legislature, please select the electors and end this crisis. Let the other side litigate this issue to the U.S. Supreme Court if they like, which will enforce the Constitution as it was written in favor of your authority. When the Pennsylvania legislature leads on this issue, other states will follow. Guys, let that sink in. It is huge. And Andy was really out in front with this. He's leading the way, blazing a trail, but he is hardly alone, okay? Fox News personality Mark Levin. And this guy, you know, we disagree with him sometimes, maybe more than sometimes, but he is a legal expert. In fact, he was the former chief of staff to Attorney General Edwin Meese during the Ronald Reagan administration. And what he said on Twitter, and, of course, Twitter had to attach that silly little thing saying that everybody's a liar who doesn't agree with the lunatic running Twitter. Said, a reminder to the Republican state legislatures, you have the final say over the choosing of electors, not any board of elections, secretary of state, governor, or even court. You have the final say. Article 2 of the federal Constitution. So get ready to do your constitutional duty. Okay, hugely important, guys. One of Trump's sons even retweeted this message. Naturally, the people who are living in La La Land, pretending like Biden is already the supreme grand leader, master of the universe, were totally apoplectic and they were melting down. But that's okay. Let them do it, right? Now, also, the former CEO of the John Birch Society just filmed a very recent video in which he also urged Americans and members of the John Birch Society, members all across the country, working in all 50 states, to get on this. And he said, what you need to do, is contact your state representative and senator and point out to them that they have the power to overturn the fraud in their state if they simply will meet and do so. He said it's their responsibility. They must be made to accept it and then do something about it. So, pointing to the U.S. Constitution, former Clinton advisor and master political operative Dick Morris has also been pushing this same idea. He went on Newsmax and he said, check this out.
We have to do two things. We have to move the fight from the executive branch of the states to the legislative branch of the states. In all of these four key states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, there are Democratic governors, but both houses of the legislature are Republican. And those guys need to wake up. And if you live in those states, you need to call your state rep and your state senator and say, get on the ball. Get to the state capitol, demand that the legislature be called into session, and take over the counting process. The U.S. Constitution does not say that the states shall decide the procedure for electoral votes. They say the legislatures should decide it, not the governors, the legislatures.
And there's some real high-profile backers of this who are already in positions of authority. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is one of them. He went on with Fox News' Laura Ingraham, and he urged legislators in all these states to use all means at their disposal to make sure that the election is not stolen. Under Article 2 of the Constitution, presidential electors are done by legislatures and the schemes they create in the framework. If there is departure from that and they're not following the law, if they're ignoring law, then they can provide remedies as well. So I would exhaust every option to make sure we have a fair count. He called out Pennsylvania and Wisconsin as especially egregious examples of this sort of stuff, pointing to the 4 a.m. dump of massive votes for one candidate and almost none for the other. All right, thank you, dear Governor DeSantis. It's nice to see some of our governors at least standing up to do the right thing. There are already more than a few lawmakers in these key states who are working on this. In fact, I've already communicated with a number of them in Arizona, in Pennsylvania. There are very serious efforts now to round up enough Republican legislators in these states to flip the Electoral College and deliver that vote for President Trump. That would give him a second term. And obviously, the Trump administration is pretty confident that this is going to happen. We saw Secretary of State Mike Pompeo explain very recently that he expects a smooth transition to power for the Trump administration.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, mid-afternoon, will also be successful.
In response to an email about all of this, Pennsylvania State Senator Mario Scavello said that he agrees, and he also included a link to a video he made about massive voter fraud in his state. He blasted the Secretary of State and the state Supreme Court. They changed all the election rules right before the election. They have no authority to do that. He pointed out that they were usurping the legislature's role. And hey, if you guys want to legislate, that's fine. Just run for the legislature and quit legislating when you are in the executive branch or the judicial branch. So the state senator there, Scavello, one of many, many heroes, trying to expose all of this fraudulent activity. In Michigan, lawmakers have also taken action already. In fact, the weekend after the election, the legislature got together. They had a very unusual Saturday session, and right at the top of their agenda was discussing that quote-unquote software glitch, notice the air quotes, that somehow mysteriously gave 6,000 Trump votes to Joe Biden in one rural county, in Antrim County. Of course, this glitch has been discovered in other jurisdictions as well. And isn't it interesting that the glitches all seem to favor sleepy Joe Biden and never seem to favor Donald Trump? So again, there's more than enough ammunition for all these Republican legislatures to say, no, guys, sorry, fraud is not going to decide our election. The legislature will send Trump voters to the Electoral College. And Trump has actually pointed out all this computer vote fraud as well. Talked about Dominion voting systems and all these irregularities. Now, even the fake fact-checking sites, and normally the fake fact-checkers are just a total disgrace. And this time they did confirm that actually, yeah, state legislators have the power to do exactly what I just described to you. So USA Today, one of the major fake newspapers in this country, they had a girl named Chelsea Cox, and she wrote a fact check about this idea that legislatures could refuse to send phony Biden voters. And she said, we rate this as true based on our research. She says the Constitution grants state legislators the power to choose electors for the Electoral College. Okay, there you go, folks. And she says, yeah, electors have the final say in the outcome of the presidential election. So if Pennsylvania and Arizona were to send Republican Trump electors to the Electoral College, that would be it, guys. Trump would get a second term. Now, this has even been upheld recently by the U.S. Supreme Court. In the Bush versus Gore case, not more than 2 decades ago, the U.S. Supreme Court said, and I'm quoting, that legislatures can take back the power to appoint electors at any time. Okay, that means that regardless of the vote fraud, all these GOP legislatures, without any consent from the governor, without any questions from the court, can say, nope, we're sending Trump electors to the Electoral Electoral College. Simple as that. Nope, we're not going to let the vote fraud win the day. We're going to send Republican legislators. The Constitution upholds it. The courts uphold it. And now, even if the Electoral College vote is not clear come January 6th when they meet in Congress, Trump can still become the president. In fact, at that point, the 12th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution kicks in if none of the candidates have the 270 votes that they need. And at that point, I quote, "The House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president." Wow, that sounds scary until you realize, continuing in the 12th Amendment, but in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having one vote. All right, guys, let that sink in. Republicans currently control a large majority of state delegations. I think they have at least 4 or 5 more state delegations than the Democrats do. That means that if this goes to Congress, because there's no clear victory in the Electoral College, Trump gets a second term again, as long as he can keep the Republicans in line. So, guys, don't let the fake media demoralize you. Don't let the psychological warfare and terrorism demoralize you. This is not over until the proverbial fat lady sings, when the Electoral College will decide who will be the president of the United States. Now, aside from calling your legislators and your representatives, your state senators, and urging others to do the same, there is a whole lot more that can be done, that must be done, that you can help do, and that state, local, federal officials can do at every level. We need lawsuits. We need more criminal investigations at every level, right? At the federal level, the Trump administration is already working in the courts. They've already filed this massive array of lawsuits. A lot of legal experts believe that at least some of these will be successful. In fact, the U.S. Supreme Court has already intervened in Pennsylvania. The justice in charge there said that the ballots must be segregated in Pennsylvania, those that were received on time and those that were received after the election was officially over. Why would he do that unless they were planning to use this in a future court case? Now, U.S. Attorney General William Barr, and I would never hold my breath waiting for William Barr to save the day. I've been saying that for years. This guy's a Bush guy, but he did authorize U.S. attorneys all across the country to investigate when there is a substantial allegation of voter fraud. We've also got members of Congress pressuring him to do this. We've got a coalition of dozens and dozens of House Republicans saying that, yeah, every state runs its own election, that's true, but the U.S. Department of Justice is ultimately responsible for the integrity of federal elections. So if there was fraud and the state and local prosecutors, some of whom were elected with massive George Soros money, don't want to prosecute, well, hey, Barr, do your job. Right? Now, these legislators or these lawmakers from the House also blasted these decisions from these state courts, that these decisions that weren't obeyed by election authorities, where they wouldn't let Trump observers or neutral observers come in and look at these things. Unbelievable. And so these House Republicans are calling on Attorney General Barr to get busy and start prosecuting where prosecuting is necessary and start investigating all this vote fraud. So that process has already started. Hopefully something will come of that. Now, activists, don't sit around and wait for these investigations. Get busy. We've heard endless time, oh, don't worry, we're investigating, and then everybody just kind of goes back to sleep, and then they investigate forever, and then, oh, sorry, never mind, just kidding. We can't wait for that to happen, guys. As Art Thompson said, we have got to let Trump worry about that in the courts. We, as activists, can go and work with our state legislators now and our state senators. It is imperative. Now, we've also got a lot of state-level involvement here. The Nevada GOP announced very shortly after the election that its legal team was seeking criminal investigations. They made a referral for criminal voter fraud all across the state. They've got thousands of fraudulent votes from people who do not live in Nevada. And they said, we expect that number to grow substantially. Okay, guys? Thousands of fraudulent votes that appear to have violated the law, okay? These are people who do not live in Nevada who voted. And then again, this is scratching the surface. We're not even into the computer stuff. If you want to hear the computer stuff, go listen to the interview that my friend and colleague Bill Jasper did with General McInerney. Hugely important, guys. The Trump campaign has also highlighted this. They noted in a letter that voter fraud is a serious federal felony. Okay, people need to be going to jail for this, guys. And Attorney General Barr is already working on this. But again, don't wait for the outcome of these investigations. Get busy now working with your state legislators, guys. There's a time limit on this. The electors need to be kind of selected and approved at least 6 days before they go to vote, or Congress may not accept their credentials as electors. So make sure you get involved, guys. State attorneys general are also now joining the fray. We've got at least 10 Republican state attorneys general, led by the Attorney General of Missouri, that are joining in. They filed an amicus brief at the U.S. Supreme Court supporting the Trump administration. We've got attorney generals from Kentucky, Florida, Mississippi, South Carolina, South Dakota, Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, and they are urging the Supreme Court to look into this and support Trump in this scandalous so-called election in Pennsylvania. Much more action is expected. Now, we also have the information war, guys. We warned you months before the presidential election that the deep state was planning a color revolution against Trump and against America. One of their critical tools in this is the ability to control the narrative. Fox News was probably the linchpin of this operation because no conservative, no sensible Republican, no sane person believes the obviously fake media anymore. So Fox News was critical to this operation. Now, News Corporation, we should do a whole show on News Corporation. They are the controlled opposition media. In fact, the New York Post blatantly lied about us, and even when they were given all the evidence of the fact that they were lying, they refused to correct the record. So Rupert Murdoch is not your friend. Rupert Murdoch's son is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. News Corp for a long time was a corporate member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And so they needed Fox News to call the election, especially in Arizona and some of these other states, for Biden. Otherwise, Trump supporters never would have believed it. Well, now it blew up in their face. Fox News is so discredited. Apparently, they've even hired a crisis PR team now. Please, guys, don't leave us, okay? Because everybody knows that this election was a fraud, and if Fox News wants to try to cover it up, they're going to lose their viewers. Praise God for that. We also have the big tech social media totalitarians trying fiendishly to censor everybody who talks about this. If you go to Google, if you go to YouTube, if you go to Facebook, if you go to Twitter, they are frantically trying to stop everybody from communicating, including me, by the way. Facebook has banned me for 30 days because I posted something about it. Oh, they didn't actually tell me why, but I assume because it happened right after I posted about election fraud. So, guys, we need, as concerned Americans, as patriots, ways to bypass the propaganda machine. There are lots of ways to do that, but we must get busy. We need to be talking with our friends, with our neighbors, with our families, with our churches, with our political allies, with the people on our block. The John Birch Society has been doing this for 60 years. They've got an architecture in place, tools like the New American Magazine, where we don't depend on CBS, ABC, Fox News, CNN, and the other fake news artists to get the information out. Okay, target opinion molders in particular. Go after radio hosts, business people in your community, pastors, right? The people who have a lot of influence already. Now, as to the best of your ability, find alternative sources of information. Don't rely on the fake news. Don't rely on the big networks. One America News and Newsmax have benefited massively from this exodus from Fox News. I've been on both of those, and so have many other people here. They're decent channels. So far, they have been reporting honestly and accurately about the election fraud that we've been seeing, and this is a very good thing. So we should keep our eyes on them. Now, we've also got these nationwide rallies, Stop the Steal rallies, happening all over the country, all over the place. Now, Trump has proven that he has the ability to get tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people out almost anywhere he goes, right? He shows up at an airport and you've got tens of thousands of people outside just trying to get in so badly. So Facebook has tried to stop this organizing, but no matter what they do, it is going on. So we've got to keep getting the information out. We've got to bypass the gatekeepers. We must stay very active here. And finally, we got to bypass the big tech totalitarians too. All these Silicon Valley tyrants, Jack the weirdo and Mark Zuckerberg and the guys at Google, most of whom got their start with government money and support from government, right? Google, of course, got funding from DARPA right in the very beginning. Facebook had investments from people associated with InQtel, the intelligence community's investment arm. Now, we need to get away from these, guys. Parler is a great alternative. My friends over at Freedom Project Media, they put something up there a couple days ago, and over 100,000 views in one day. Okay, massive exodus from the totalitarian sites that want to regulate what you can say, what you can see, what you can read, what you can hear, who you can communicate, how you can communicate with them. And we've got a massive exodus now over to other platforms. So go to Parler, check out MeWe, check out Gab. We're putting up accounts on all these. BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble. In the weeks and months ahead, some of these are going to become huge, and it is imperative that we, as freedom-loving patriots, God-fearing Americans, utilize these tools to continue getting good information out to the troops on the ground. Now, last but certainly not least, if somehow Sleepy Joe Biden and the revolutionary Kamala Harris, who slept her way to the top by cheating, by helping the San Francisco mayor cheat on his wife, don't even get me started on these revolutionaries and anti-freedom totalitarians. But if somehow they end up in the White House, which at this point I am not at all convinced that's going to happen, but if it does, that doesn't mean we give up and go home and accept the loss of our freedom and the theft of our country. Absolutely not. Most states in this union are firmly in Republican control. The Democrats led the way. Over the last 4 years, they have showed, and I mean, we've been saying this for decades, but finally, the Democrats proved that it can be done, that it must be done. Right? Oh, we're going to be a sanctuary state. Oh, we're going to be a sanctuary city, a sanctuary county. Great. Thank you guys for leading the way. We will be sanctuary states and sanctuary counties for gun rights, for churches, for free speech, for all of it. You guys can go pound sand. We are not going to be giving up our gun rights. So guys, if you love America, in a worst case scenario, Biden becomes the president, we need the biggest resistance movement that this country has ever seen. State, county, local level, our sheriffs, all of them. When Biden comes up with unconstitutional executive orders, we say no. When he comes to confiscate our AR-15s,
wait. Take your AR-14s.
we say, hey, if we had any AR-14s, we still wouldn't give you our AR-14s, okay? It's not going to happen. Not going to happen, folks. Your executive orders are null and void. You have no authority to pass executive orders that infringe on our liberties here. So, guys, we must make the Biden presidency the most impotent presidency ever. We cannot let them trample on our rights. We cannot let them trample on our freedom. We must go back and watch the episode we did on nullification. Guys, this is what the Founding Fathers said was the rightful remedy for unconstitutional federal power grabs. So if Biden manages to steal the election, we must refuse to comply with every legal and lawful means at our disposal. With enough support from the public, their plans will fall flat. America will survive as a free nation, and we can hand on our constitutional republic to our children and our grandchildren. We must do it, folks. They say every time someone subscribes to the New American Magazine, a member of the deep state loses his mind. Well, now's your chance to help a lot of deep state members lose their mind. Head over to thenewamerican.com, subscribe to the magazine, subscribe to our daily, weekly, or monthly headlines, and let's beat the deep state into the ground. I'm Alex Newman. Thanks for watching.